Hi,
Okay.
host Eric here, host talking with famous people, talking with Megabro, and Megabro has been doing some research, always a dangerous thing. Let's find out if he's discovered a new weapon of mass destruction. Is that what's happened?
One second. Um, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I was just putting some earbuds in.
Okay, cool. So you've been doing some research.
Well,
Have
today,
have you come up with some kind of death ray?
no, it's not. It's not physical research.
Is it metaphysical research?
It does have some metaphysics in it, yes. More than I normally do, but I guess you got to do what you got to do.
Okay, so tell me about it. What you got going on? What were you researching?
Well, I was thinking about how information. Well, I don't really know how to put it. Uh, the it's a time thing, okay?
Hmm.
Um, Socionics calls NI the intuition of time, and
Okay.
I've been really working that angle on this idea. Um, I guess I can start at the beginning. Um, well, for example, when I was like a teenager, the way I figured out my moral code was that I actually did like time derivatives, a series of time derivatives, starting from uh, I was trying to figure out what actions would be good and which ones would be bad, and I started from the assumption that the code should protect people,
Okay.
and so what I did was I figured the bottom level of protection should be like protecting physically, like the physical body property,
Uh huh.
and that would be like a state, a physical state.
Okay.
And in calculus, that would be like a position.
Okay.
If you do a derivative of time of a position, you get an acceleration. Sorry, you get a velocity.
Say that
And
again.
if you do a derivative of a position over time, you get a
Mm-hmm.
velocity. And if you do a derivative of like a person's physical state over time, that would be the actions that caused the state.
Okay. Um.
So in order to go from the actions, you would integrate a set of actions over time, and that would cause a change in state.
Okay.
It goes up and down.
So fine. That makes fine sense. What you're saying there is that there's a way to determine causality as a descriptor of state change within a system. It sounds like what you're saying. Is it more complicated than
Right.
that?
Well, the thing is, you can keep on doing this over and over again.
Okay.
So that was just the first time derivative that I did. Well, I guess I didn't finish describing that one. So the first thing that has to be protected to protect people is you have to protect their bodies and property. Like you wouldn't want to harm those.
Right.
And the second thing is you have to protect their ability to take action. So you have
Okay.
to, like their ability to act upon their moral agency.
Okay.
And if you take another time derivative of that, then that would be like acceleration in calculus, and in the in person valuing, that would be like making a decision to take an action.
Okay.
So that the acceleration and decision would line up with each other.
So intentionality is the force vector by which decisions are made.
Right. Well, I kind of consider, unless you mean something different by intentionality than I do, I kind of have intentionality and decision as like the same thing.
Okay, fine. Well, I mean, yeah, okay, fine. That's fair enough. So that's a good frame of reference. The idea that the ability to attain your actualized self as a moral agent requires capacity to engage a moral agency on a practical level, and it means security in which to practice moral agency on a metaphysical level. So that's why we would have rights protections and stuff, or maybe you have metaphysical and physical backwards. I don't know, but you have rights protections.
I don't think.
Go ahead.
I don't think we've gotten to metaphysical yet.
Oh, okay. So, but
from where I'm standing.
But look, the second one you're talking about though is not easily well defined, right? The capacity to take action is not so easily defined as the negative right aspect of it. Unless we describe it as wealth. If we want to define it as that, that's fine. Then we have a concrete definition of it.
Now wait a second. It's don't quite know off the top of my head how to put.
What barriers are there? What barriers are there in the status quo that prevent?
Well, I'm not saying there are barriers for things over here yet. Like it would have to involve things like brainwashing or something.
Oh, okay. I see. I get what you're saying. Okay, never mind. Go ahead then. I was imagining. Never mind. Doesn't matter why I was wrong. Continue.
And so when I was a kid, I only went up one more level for 4 levels total. If you take the derivative of time of the ability to make the decision, then you would have knowledge upon which you're basing your decision. I forget what that's called in calculus. It's the derivative of it's a derivative of acceleration over time. I don't remember what that's called. It's not called naught. It's called something else. I don't have those notes with me right now.
Okay, I'm interested in learning more at some point in the future about how exactly these derivative functions work, what it means to say, like, because obviously you're using the term as an analog for how it's used in math, and it's engaged in a comparable functionality in this equation of yours, but I'm not quite exactly sure what you mean by taking a derivative of something.
It's like you use the term time magic, right?
Uh-huh.
It's kind of like that. I think the way you use it, it's like it's the seed that causes the other stuff to happen.
I see.
And the knowledge.
You're like metaing up a level / reverse engineering or something.
Yeah, each time I'm metaing up a level, and actually when I when I was a kid, I only meted up to the 4th level. And I just like I guess a few days ago, I realized that if you keep on metaing up, you get up into metaphysics.
Well, you were already there, though. That's the thing. The thing about
Well, the thing is,
it should be simple. It
this
shouldn't be complicated.
this level of metaphysics is totally within the realm of TE. If you keep going farther, it gets into all sorts of weird stuff that I haven't quite been down yet.
Oh well, you know, I had a really interesting notion. I'm going to interrupt the progression of this conversation a bit to mention this, which is related to NI and TE. Okay, so I realized exactly the ways in which an NE-SI axis blocks recognition of NI-TE truths today. And here's how it is. Here's how it works. I'll show you. This is a nice visual example. If you look here, you'll see that on the wall, up high there, is this power strip, right? That I put it there. But then the problem is, the stuff I'm plugging in is down the floor, and over here, and down below this thing, right? So, in order to plug shit in up here, the cords are always in the way. So then I have this, I make this little arch with this cord so I can walk underneath it, you know? And I've got various half-assed solutions to it. Well, naturally it occurred to me at some point early on, oh, you know what you should maybe do, Eric? You should move the power strip down to the ground or something like that, closer to the ground. That would make a lot more sense. But I never put 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 together. So that was one of many possible solutions that I went through in my head as I tripped over the cords multiple times. And then today, in the shower, it hit me. I was like, oh, you should move it down to the ground. That's for sure the right answer, because you know now, from now on, that basically the shit you're plugging in there, your desk isn't over there anymore. That's why it was up high in the first place. You should definitely move it down to the ground. That way nobody will trip over it and it'll be easier to plug it in. Or at more like, yeah, you got to move it to the ground. You won't trip over shit. And it struck me the intuitive truth of it. Well, that's what you have to do, and here's why, rather than it just being one of the possibilities. Whereas normally, it's hard for me to assign, oh, that's the one, right? Even when it's obviously one correct answer, like there is this time, because there's not always, and my NE doesn't know how to navigate that very well.
So, you're using all this electrical stuff around a desk?
Yeah.
What I'm doing is I'm using industrial strength Velcro, and I'm sticking a strip of it up inside a crack in the desk, and I'm sticking a power strip onto that with more industrial strength Velcro. You know, so the power strip's got Velcro on it, and the desk's got a Velcro strip on it, and that's how I'm sticking the power strip. I'm sticking up in a crack in the desk.
Right. Well, I am sure that your system is better than mine, Megabro. Mine is the textbook example of how not to set shit up, right? Oh, I've got some stuff here and some stuff over there, and so I know I'll do this. Yay! Perfect, right? Huh? But see, it's actually kind of clever. This thing here is like a magazine holder thing, and it's got a hanging part, and there's a little wire here that it hangs over. So I hung it there, and I just put all that crap right there. Seems like a good enough solution. I don't know. Not very fancy though. Hold on, I gotta take this call. Maybe Nandi or Raven or Tranjral can engage for a second. Hello.
I haven't heard about the world peace paradox.
Hello.
Hello.
That thing's being weird. If you can hear me, give me a second. What about now? You hear me?
Yeah.
being stupid. Anyway, yeah. I don't know if it was like I came up with it a long time ago, but there's like, I don't know. I like a lot of contradictories, and I figured that would catch your interest. It seems that I don't know if it's an INTP thing, but
Is this your microphone?
It's my phone, but it tends that's the only way that I can communicate. So.
All right.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah. It somehow got better.
Oh, okay. I'm probably like I'm probably much closer to my phone. Yeah, no, I don't know if it's just an INTJ or an INTP thing, but I've noticed that a lot of INTJs are very much attracted to paradoxes or contradictions, or I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, but anitomies. Basically things that aren't externally consistent. So basically what the world peace paradox is like the whole world can't be at peace. And paradoxically, it's because the only way that it could be is if one person was able to somehow take over the world and make everybody robots and control them. And the only way that the person could do that is basically control everybody's mind and make sure that that actually works with their plan that they have in mind. But that possibly couldn't work because the only way they could do that is kill everybody else. And the reason why I say that is because other people think just like the person who's trying to take over the world. You see what I'm saying? Like a paradox there.
I think I have the gist of what you're saying. It's hard to hear. I actually don't necessarily agree. I mean, the world is getting a lot more peaceful all the time.
Yeah. It doesn't require. The reason it's wrong, your paradox, and the reason it's not a paradox is because the thing is the only way your claim, the only way to achieve world peace is if blah 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 blah. That's the false part. In fact, that's the only way to guarantee you're never going to achieve world peace, right? If we try to view peace. If we try to view peace as necessarily involving one party having control over all the other parties, then it's never going to be peaceful. So that's why I don't think that it's a paradox. I think it's indicative of the fact that we need to take a different approach towards peace, namely the attainment of meta-rationality.
All right. Oh, jeez. So that was kind of my thing with it too, because I've been thinking about it a lot. But I think another thing that came up, and the reason why I thought of this before, was because my father was like, world peace is achievable, and I argued that it wasn't, and he tried to give me his claim that it could be, and that's kind of where this came from.
I think it could be. I think we're on our way there, but it's not a matter of executing the existing paradigms more, right? That's what that notion is. That like, well, okay, if somebody had control over everything, then they could force world peace. That's it. That idea is doing the existing paradigm more. What we need to do is change paradigms so that it's about not nobody being in charge. That's what it's about, instead of about a different person being in charge or being in charge in a different way. It's about not being in charge,
Right.
Replace physical warfare with warfare of ideas.
Right. Exactly. And I think I've been doing a lot of thinking about this meta-rationality thing, which is an idea that has come into my life that has collapsed all my other ideas into a sensible organizational scheme now. It's been incredibly powerful for me to just read that one page of stuff on meta-rationalities. All it took for me to collapse everything fell into place. Because here's the deal: the problem that we have as a civilization, as a human species, is that some adults are engaging in position defense and advocacy because they're at a stage of development in which they comprise their identity of these different position statements. Hold on one second, Dave. We'll be with you in a second. So I think it's a matter of these position statements and one's relationship with them. That at that stage of development, people are engaged in thinking that their identity is defined by the positions that they attribute their belief to. But that's never actually the case. That's never actually the case, and it causes a lot of misconception, a lot of difficulty. Well, you've got incredible background noise coming through. It sounds like you're at a chip bag wrinkling factory. Hey, David.
Still trying to make sure that I'm heard correctly. This thing's being ridiculous. Do you hear any muffling, Megabro?
It's not muffling. It's more like a very loud cracking, and it's not right now. It was a minute ago.
Oh, okay. So is it is it still water right now? Like all you can hear is my voice.
I can hear you fine right now.
Okay. Well, the only reason why I brought it up was because I just thought it was an interesting, conversation, me and my father had. And I don't know if...
I'm not sure I heard it all correctly.
I mean,
it was...
Oh, sorry. I mean, it was really just kind of a simple concept, and I thought it was interesting, and Eric did a really good job at, saying what a solution could be as far as world peace is concerned. To me, it just seems like the reason why, at least I think world peace is not achievable, and I'm kind of wishy-washy about it, but there seems to be the problem now is, as Eric put it, is status. People are very, people are very different, and that was a big thing with me. That's what kind of convinced me more so. But it's like everybody's after a certain sense of fulfillment, or they want something out of life, or people perceive life in a different way. And you have all these different people, even by the MBTI statistics of personality types alone, you can definitely see a completely variety of different people, and that's kind of what made me come to that conclusion. Was you have all these different people, and they all want something different. So, I mean, that's just kind of where I went with it. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that's the idea that I got.
I think having people all have different wants makes it harder for them to organize to fight a war.
Right.
If everyone can agree on fighting a war, then that's when the war happens.
So, I think trying to think of a way to kind of present a certain example. If people wanted peace, it's like they want peace for, and you made a good point. Everybody is going to agree on starting a war, even if they all have different reasons on why they're going to start it. They are going to agree to at least, start the war or go with the war. And I guess that could come to the same conclusion as peace is too. Even though people have a bunch of different views, they could come to at least a synthesized conclusion, I guess.
This is why I think argumentation is the key. Argumentation is the key, because the point is we shouldn't proceed on that plan not until we all agree we should go to war, but until we all agree why we should go to war.
Right.
And in fact, we should argue all those reasons out and get rid of all the bad ones, and then go to war for only the reasons that are correct if we're going to war at all, right? Now that process is deliberative by nature. The extent to which the way that the group acts, is subject to more discursive analysis, more argumentation, more breaking down of the points and counterpoints on either side of a given course of action, the less action is taken, which is what we want. We want the we to be very difficult for we to take action.
Right. I'm thinking a bit, so trying to reflect on this.
Okay, so as I was thinking about these stages of rational development in human beings, and Megabro, if this is correlate with your topic that you brought in, sort of, then great. If not, then we can go back to that in a second, but let me know if it's relevant. That humans start off, they don't have any identity, and they engage in pre-rational behavior, which is basically until you have language or some sort of system of thought that allows you to move through the world by a meaning, then you're in a state of pre-rationality, because it's not even possible to be rational. In the second stage, you're in a state of identity, where you don't distinguish between your behavior and your positions. You just don't distinguish between them. And that's kind of a similar place in which you get later on too. But in stage 3, when you get into adulthood, that's when the positions that you've ascribed to your identity in stage 2 become things that you actually argue in defense of. Now, because they were reached through that identity mechanism rather than through reason itself, even though you, as part of your identity, imprinted upon yourself some of the habits and some of the phrases and stuff of rationality, and some of the positions of rationality, and some of the claims that rationality makes about itself, you're going to use rationality to defend your identity-driven positions. So as long as you feel as though your identity is defined by the position statements that you defend, advocate, and ascribe to, then you will continue to be in a irrational stage. In the fourth stage, you have the rational stage, in which case you decide to level up. You take the derivative of your belief in, would this be the correct way to use it? Megabro, take the derivative of your belief and advocacy that occurs in stage 3, and you say, okay, well, let me instead believe in the mechanism of reason as a means to adjudicate issues of truth, instead of any particular truth that it concludes about. And in that stage, you use reason to dismantle things rather than to build things. So in stage 3, you're affirming shit, whatever it is. You are affirming your position, and you are defining it against some other group and their positions. And it's often done through labeling rather than through the actual positions themselves. You're not aware of the contradictions, you tolerate them by denying them. In the next stage, stage 4, you don't tolerate contradictions, and you instead put reason as the prime that has primacy. And then in the final stage, you transition away from just pure reason, and you say, okay, reason is one frame of reference, and I use it in certain contexts to engage in rational behavior, like right now, but in other contexts I use other modalities, and it's okay to use those other modalities, and they shouldn't be they have their jurisdiction, their areas of life in which they're the appropriate tool to use, and they've got their limits as well. So that's basically what I think about that.
Well, it's interesting. It is also it has it has some of those stages on it go on different cognitive functions derivatives, so it's kind of mixed. It's very FETI heavy. Like some of those early stages would be like a low level of derivative on FE, then it'd be higher level derivative on FE, and then it went to TI, and then it went to, it actually stopped taking TI so seriously, but was still retained the ability to use it.
Right. Well, I mean, I think the ways of TI are going to be somewhat. I mean, you use TI differently according to where it falls in the stack, right? But the point of it is, we have already acknowledged there are certain dominions in which each of these cognitive functions ought be supreme, but we don't have any agreement about which those are. My position is we should and can have agreement about that. So in certain circumstances, if we can define these contexts carefully enough, you say, yes, TI should be dominant here, TE should be dominant there, FE should be dominant here, FI should be dominant there, and you're just talking about judging functions, you're not talking about the perceiving functions. So it's like, absolutely, it's a TI paradigm that says we should do discursive analysis as a deliberative mechanism to come to a conclusion about each of the given reasons for a given thing, and that process ought to be prioritized over anything else, because we're talking about public policy, and it's the only way we can do those things fairly, given the fact that we all come into it with different sets of beliefs and opinions and stuff like that. But then somebody might say, well, but you're not paying attention to the TE truths here. Well, my point is the TE truths probably don't occur in that schemata or in this scheme. It's like there is no protocol to solve this problem if it's a chaotic system and we're misunderstanding the nature of the problem, right?
Well, you'd be surprised at what I'm working on.
Some sort of a bridge thing, yeah? Because to me, the bridge lies between distinguishing between behaviors, position statements, and other kinds of communicative gestures. So if I'm doing something like screaming and waving flags and yo, hooray, hooray at a sports game, it means something different than when I'm doing it in here. It means I'm mad at the sports game. It means I'm participating in ritualistic FE expressions for sports or something. The point being that we run afoul when we assume that behaviors imply positions, and that when we assume that because we want to behave in a given fashion, we have to ascribe to the position statements and argue the position statements of that stuff. That's where the conflict comes into place. And so it's a matter of being able to understand when words are used for the purpose of positioning things as position statements, and they're not time sensitive, right? Like, you can engage in a behavior that contradicts a given position statement, just not at the same time. We think that we have beliefs that we carry around with us because we repeat ourselves. I'm saying the same basic ideas that I did last night in a slightly different way, and because I think this is really significant, I think people haven't considered it. The fact that you can engage in a behavior that would imply position statements, but then also deny those position statements and ascribe to different position statements that are more logical. The reason is because the behavior is non-rational or irrational. The advocacy or the argumentation must be rational. Any thoughts?
I actually just wanted to, I guess, add something, but not. I mean, I was actually listening to everything you were saying, and that's actually a very good point. But I just wanted to give a little bit of useless information. In socionics, because I noticed that Megabro has that ILI as his first thing behind the INTJ thing. Funny enough, the ENTP has a valued, or not valued, but it's a strong unconscious mobilizing function. So you're an ENTP, and your second function is TI, but behind your unconscious, and you're not aware of it, but your TE is strong. So you'll use your TE in certain conversations, maybe not realizing it, or even you do realize it, but you don't value it. Whereas,
Yeah, it's strong though. There's no doubt that it's strong. It's because, I mean, I had to work at a job where all I did was make protocols, basically. So I
yeah,
mean, it's kind of unavoidable. It's going to be strong in that context. But that doesn't mean I do. You're right that I don't value it. The thing I much prefer doing is the thing that I can't protocol, which is coaching debate, rather than being a director and the shit I was doing before, which I was required to protocol. So yeah,
well, I think there's a very interesting relationship between an ENTP and an INTJ when they're talking, because an INTJ's second function, or their sixth function that respects their second function, is TI. So whenever Megabro is talking, I mean, I could be wrong, but he sounds very analytical whenever he's trying to refer to what you said. So if you say something in his head, he's already trying to break down what you said and then back to you in a TE manner, maybe. But he doesn't value it, but it is a strong function in the process whenever either conversing with people or whenever he processes information, um, and so forth. So there's kind of whenever I hear you two talk, you guys can somewhat agree quite closely, or at least understand each other from a logical perspective.
that's true. And I mean, the thing is, he Megabro goes about it much more directly, right?
Right,
Because I kind of wander around trying to figure out what exactly I'm thinking and saying a lot of times. It's not instant for me.
right,
Um, but the the thing about that is, Megabro and I also have kind of a different angle on it. My angle is very verbal. It's about how can we use words to solve this problem, and his solutions typically are not nearly so verbal, and his perceptions of things. It's like, uh,
Oh yeah, the dichotomies are different, because if I remember correctly, TIFE axes is basically says uh, what is the logical internal formation or system, and how can I communicate it to others? And then FITE is basically what do I want and how can I get it? Uh, that's at least what I've researched.
I would say that TE is more specifically, um, finding. See, I think with the TI, you're talking about communicating to others is an interesting way of phrasing it, because TE, in my understanding of it, is is caring. It's really okay. TITE is caring, right? Which way do you care? Do you care about the the logic within you, and you know that you might have logical constructions inside your head, but you don't necessarily convey them to other people directly. And in fact, a lot of times when now this being an exception, one thing I've started to get over is this tendency to withhold things because, well, you haven't gotten there yet. This is a battle, right? Everything's a battle, so you haven't gotten there yet. So why am I going to give you information unnecessarily?
Right.
But that's silly, because it's not a battle. It's not a battle, Eric. You just got to stop trying to make everything a fucking battle. And if I'm just expressing my positions and stuff, and expressing the notion that there's a value to embracing, say, magical thinking or something, then I might as well just come right out and say it, not screw around. That's caring about other people's understanding. That's TE in general. The TI, I don't view it as caring about other people's understanding, even though it cares about expressing things in ways that have impact on the conditionality web.
Right. I think like at least whenever I look at TI, I agree with what you said just now about TI. I tend to have those same thoughts. But I think another thing with TI to add on to that is like it's almost a one system, at least with me. Like whenever I'm reflecting on things, I'm always not only am I trying to make sure that everything I've learned thus far and everything that I'm convinced is true, it's logically consistent with everything else that I've learned thus far, for one, but also whether these logical consistencies are of a negative sphere or a positive sphere, I look at my internal mind as like a yin and yang. So it has to be like symmetrically balanced. Whether
What makes
it's
it negative or positive? What do you mean by that?
so like say for instance, you learn something that's false. Like if you know what is a lie, and you know what lies are, and what they're capable of, and how this affects other people, and how this affects, you know, your life as you go, and so on. That in turns can either be negative, or I would more so say neutral. Because then if you look at it like if the truths, if your logical truths that you have are consistent as well, this is more of a positive outlook in your system. But if you look at it also on a moral standard, at least, say for instance, okay, I know all of the bad things about life, and then another half of you says, I know all the good things about life. It's just an example, but I know all the good things about life. Well, it seems that there needs to be a balance. There needs to be a symmetrical duality between, you know, black and white, or red and blue, or you know, there needs to be.
I don't like that notion. I really don't. I do understand that we understand suffering and the good via the experience of the other to a certain extent, right? That there's an amount of suffering that must be undergone in order to realize a level of depth that would otherwise be unable to realize. To be able to take your natural human empathy and turn it into a meaningful ethics requires a certain amount of suffering, I think. But I absolutely reject those Eastern balance notions, and the reason is because, one, unlike a Western rationality segueing into post-rationality or meta-rationality or intentional irrationality, intentional self-knowing irrationality, that is a vastly superior system because, one, it provides us direct guidance as to where we go for our spiritual truth, and two, it doesn't make the mistake that the East makes, which is to note that because the system necessarily is always in balance, that the individual parts of the system must need to be in balance as well. But they're not necessarily in balance at all. I'm deeply imbalanced. I'm a part of the system that's designed to promote change, push change all the time, push novelty all the time. And that makes me imbalanced. It makes me a necessary imbalanced component of a balanced system. But it doesn't mean I should balance more. I like that idea, and I may not be explaining what I mean by the internal logical balance system that I'm trying to explain, but Right. Well,
I mean
what you're saying is you need to balance out the truth that's implicit in what I'm saying with some contradictory truth that also is true in different frames of reference, and then sit back and muse upon the glorious paradox and the ineffable truths emerging forth from it. But I'm saying you don't really have to do that.
Okay. Megabro still here?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just thinking about other things.
Oh, okay. got any ideas, Megabro? Anything you want to add to like the whole? I guess how you approach. I guess what we're talking about, more or less, like how do you
I think
how do
what
you
we're talking about,
approach?
basically, I think what we're talking about is how to save humanity.
Oh, okay. I'll give you my court code when I'm done with it. And, would you rather have the framework for the court code first, or would you rather like get Alpha Quadro or Gamma Quadro or something like that?
Are you asking me?
Yeah,
So your
I
court code is
mean,
going to save humanity?
well, I mean,
Won't hurt.
it's you said the problem is people don't know how to think right, and this is going to be like a library of prompts for thinking.
Well, I think what you're doing with Quirk Code is providing the traveler's practical guide to existence in the world. What I'm trying to provide is the traveler's metaphysical guide to framing practical existence in the world, but not actually necessarily being practical at all. See, you're providing such practical, useful tools, Mega. Well, that's the problem with them. What we need is something vague and pointless.
So maybe like you know burning out so many possible. There at the end of the day, there does become a logical conclusion on how to solve problems. Maybe
I
something
think
like that.
so. I think so for sure. I think that the key is number one, metacognition, prioritizing analysis about your own thinking rather than just about the issue at hand. I think number two is meta-rationality, prioritization about the nature of rationality, the jurisdictions of rationality, the way in which individuals mistake the mechanisms of rationality sometimes for rationality itself. That's what happens a lot of times when you get somebody who's defending a position that's full of contradictions and they're using a lot of logical language. Is they're mistaking the mechanisms of rationality or the phrasings of rationality for the thing itself. And then I think additionally there are those who are stuck in what you'd call nihilism or rationality without meaning, and that ultimately the last component that is necessary to be actualized or at least be in the right ballpark is that you've got to be able to include magic in your life. Magic requires that you not make reason king of all circumstances in your life.
It, I think the only thing I can really think of, at least what I'm thinking of right now, is I'm trying to kind of composite how broad a view, um, like for instance, like with the whole library thing. It's like I'm actually not necessarily condoning the idea, although it's an interesting idea to think about. But coming up with a guide per se, or at least maybe a class or classes or whatever, maybe not to completely bog down a guide to how to live the life of a human per se, but more so a broad, like a broad knowledge of how to go about ways of exploring life, or something like that, to the point where it's like if something is rational or irrational when you make decisions, this so-called guide or book could move you in a certain direction or open your mind to a
Well,
certain
I think
direction.
you would structure such a book as a series of questions to begin with. You'd say, well, let's take a separate video on
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Book of Life. Let's make a separate video on the Book of Life and what you engage the Book of Life as, and you say, okay, well, let's do that right now.
Okay.
Thanks for watching Talking Film.